I'm Dave, and this is Austin Eats. I feel like pasta today, so I'm going to make a homemade gnocchi and finish it with a beef short rib ragu. This is going to be a northern Italian style ragu, which means it has very little tomatoes in it, but a whole lot of beef flavor. It's going to be fantastic, and it's right here on Austin Eats. To make the ragu, I'm going to begin by browning the short ribs in some hot oil in a 5-quart Dutch oven. I have 2.5 pounds of beef short ribs, which is about 8 bones, and that's just the perfect amount for this size Dutch oven. Once they've browned for a couple of minutes, I'm going to flip them to another side and brown them another couple of minutes. Doesn't matter which direction you go, you're going to end up browning all 6 sides. This is going to do a couple of things. It's going to create the reaction in the meat that's going to add a lot of flavor, and that's going to be important for this dish. Second, it gives the ribs a heads up on the cooking process. This way I'm ensured that I don't have any raw meat when I'm all done cooking. So just keep turning the ribs and browning each side, and then after about 10 to 12 minutes, the ribs are going to be done and ready to take out. Looks like I have a couple of ribs here with a lot of fat that did not render, so I'm going to trim that off after they cool for a little bit. Take the ribs out, set it aside, and lower the heat. Remove all but 1 tablespoon of the rendered fat and discard it. Then start sauteing the vegetables. First, the onions and the shallots. Let this simmer until they're softened, about 6 minutes. Then add the carrot and the celery. This will take another 5 to 6 minutes to soften. Stir it well, or you might burn the onions. Next, add the garlic and let that soften for just about a minute or two. You don't want to burn the garlic. Stir that in, and then we're going to add a cup of port wine. Now, it's important to deglaze the pan with this port wine. It's going to sizzle up, and you're going to take your spoon and just scrape all the brown bits off the bottom. Those brown bits developed when we were searing the short ribs, and that's where all the flavor is. Then add some tomato paste and a tablespoon of flour and stir it well to combine. Once combined, it's time to add some red wine to the mix. I'm using 2 cups of a Cabernet. I'm going to let that reduce for a bit, and then add some beef broth. I'm using a low sodium beef broth. The hard part is now done. I'll add a little sachet. This is just a little cheesecloth bag that has all the fresh herbs in it. I use this bag because it makes it easy to get out the stems. It's a lot better than picking it all out when it's all done. Let's add the ribs back in. Oh, this smells so good. After the ribs are all in, you may want to add a little bit of water, a cup or so, just to bring the fluid level up to close to the top of the ribs. They don't have to be fully submerged, but it helps if they're close to being fully submerged. And that little bag full of fresh herbs, you want to really push that thing down. You want it fully submerged so that the flavors really blend. Time to cover this up and put it in the oven for about 3 hours until those ribs are tender. While that's cooking, I'm going to make the gnocchi. I'm going to bake a couple of potatoes with some sea salt and a little oil on them for about an hour. Then I'm going to peel the potatoes and rice them. So putting them through a ricer, make sure that you have no big lumps. That's going to be important in the gnocchi. After that cools, transfer it to a bowl, add a couple of egg yolks, and start mixing it up. Now, at first you can do this with a big spoon, but very quickly you're going to find it's just not working quite so well. And you're going to have to get in there with your hands and get a little dirty. Transfer the mixture to a floured working surface and add about a 1/2 cup of flour. Knead that in, and then you're going to use a little more flour for sprinkling. And you're going to keep adding flour until this dough is no longer sticky. That's how you know the dough is done. Cut the dough into 4 pieces. And then one at a time, roll each piece into a rope about a 1/2 inch in diameter. This dough is very soft and very easy to work with. Has very little flour in it. It's mostly potato. Once you have that down to about a half an inch, you want them pretty uniform. If you don't have a pretty uniform, you're going to have some small gnocchi and some real big ones. So get it pretty close to half an inch throughout the entire length. Make sure the dough is covered with enough flour so that it doesn't stick, and then cut them into 1-inch pieces. And these can just be set aside on a floured surface to let dry for a little bit. To make the ridges in the gnocchi, simply press them down with your thumb on a gnocchi board and roll them diagonally across. That will create little tiny ridges in the finished product, and that will help just hang on to the sauce. Press each one, give it a roll, and off the paddle it goes. When the ribs are done and cool enough to touch, simply scrape all of the meat off of the bone and remove any obvious pieces of fat. There are going to be quite a few pieces in there, particularly on the side that touch the ribs, but it's pretty easy to get out. Once you have most of the fat out, it's time to chop up the remaining rib meat. Now this is super soft, so it doesn't take a lot of effort. The knife is just going to go right through it. You don't want real big pieces. Remember, this is going on gnocchi, so you want some texture to it, but not big pieces. So after a couple of minutes, that's about it right there. Chop it up, scoop it up, then add it right back to the sauce, and let the sauce simmer for about 25 to 30 minutes. This dish was really delicious and just not that hard to make. Give it a try. Hey, if you liked the video, let me know. And please subscribe. I've got new videos coming out every week. See you next time on Austin Eats.